Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us today. We are going to get started now. It's just past 7 p.m. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar titled Paying Attention to Teacher Wellbeing, Noticing, Nurturing, and Sustaining Flourishing in Schools. My name is Ellen Long, and I am the Lead Engagement and Knowledge Mobilization at PHE Canada. I will be introducing our presenter and supporting the delivery of the webinar. I want to begin by acknowledging that the PHE Canada office and my home office are both located on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and we honor and respect their history and culture. I also want to thank all of you for taking the time on a Thursday evening to expand your personal knowledge and expertise, especially during such busy times. Tonight's webinar is the 6th in the Teach Resiliency Education series presented by the Cooperators. We have 2 more scheduled before the end of the calendar year, and we'll be sending more information in the coming weeks. Just a few administrative items before we begin the webinar. As participants, you will be muted throughout the presentation. Dr. Cherkowski's presentation will run about 45 minutes, leaving 15 minutes or so for questions from participants at the end. Please submit your questions using the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. The chat function is available for your use and will be monitored, but is intended for discussions among participants. Please be sure to select to send your message to all participants all panelists and attendees. If you have a question specifically for Dr. Cherkowski, please use the question and answer function. For those of you not familiar with Teach Resiliency, it is an online portal offering educators simple-to-use strategies and tools to assess resilience needs and provide resources to promote and enhance teacher and student mental health. Teach Resiliency was developed in partnership with PHE Canada, Western University, and the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. Teach Resiliency is designed to develop, enhance, and support teacher competencies, enhance and support mental health literacy for teachers, offer effective and practical strategies to support child and youth resiliency and mental health, and offer effective and practical strategies to support teacher resiliency and wellness. What you see on the screen in front of you are 4 themes of the resources available on the site. Currently, there are over 175 English resources and 45 French resources, including podcasts, tip sheets, programs, and much more. All resources are developed by our team of educators, mental health professionals, and health and education leaders, curated to guidelines that include free or low cost, evidence-based or promising practice, available to teachers, and high quality. We are continuously adding new resources, so please do check back frequently. So this evening, we are very lucky to have Dr. Sabre Cherkowski joining us today. Sabre is an associate professor and director of graduate programs and research in the Okanagan School of Education at the University of British Columbia. She teaches and researches in the areas of educational leadership, professional learning, development and collaboration, and mentoring and coaching. Currently, she is engaged in a multi-year research project examining flourishing leadership in schools from a positive organizational perspective. Sabre was recently awarded UBC's Okanagan Researcher of the Year Award. Sabre brings her expertise as a teacher, coach, and parent to her passion for exploring what it means to flourish in work and life. So without any further ado, please join me in doctoring welcome Sabre Cherkowski. Over to you, Sabre.
And I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my work on teacher well-being. So I'll start with 3 signaling questions that are really helpful for individuals and teams and organizations to really orient towards this idea of well-being at the forefront of your practice. So I'll start with this infographic. I'll see if I can move the people off the screen. The importance of teacher and staff well-being. This was an infographic developed and designed by Wellahead. I retrieved it from the EdCan website, and it really shows the reasons why we need to pay attention to teacher and school staff well-being. You can see the costs incurred, both human and economic, when we don't. Stress, burnout, unhealthy coping strategies for these really take a toll on physical and mental health, as well as on our relationships, both at work and in our homes and communities. We know that stress among adults in schools has implications for student experiences and their stress levels. Teacher well-being is currently receiving international attention as an area of importance for further research to also engage in additional practices and ways of organizing. And I want to signal my encouragement of both individual and organizational interventions and approaches to increase and grow teacher well-being. It is not a one person at a time approach. It is an organizational imperative to ensure teachers have conditions and supports for well-being. And at the same time, it is important for individuals and groups of teachers to learn ways to develop well-being resilience and strategies for themselves. So through my research with my colleague, Dr. Keith Walker at the University of Saskatchewan, we pointed out that there are alternative perspectives or lenses that we can use to see, understand, and address teacher well-being. So as mentioned in my title, we used a positive organizational approach as a complementary or additional perspective to the one that investigates stressors and challenges and inhibitors to well-being. Again, I want to emphasize that research on stress and teacher burnout is critical. It is important, and we must carry on and support with the research. And at the same time, I'm offering an additional perspective, an additional aspect to the well-being story through the research that Keith and I carried out on teacher well-being. So, what do I mean by a positive organizational approach? So does a positive organizational approach, does that mean ignoring or denying the negative, the challenging, the stressful, the exhausting aspects of teaching and leading in schools? No, absolutely not. Impacted by research from scholars such as Kim Cameron, Jane Dutton, Gretchen Spreitzer, Bob Quinn, it means exploring the full continuum of human experiences at work and recognizing that well-being is on a continuum that extends beyond merely meeting the demands that are in front of us for our work. So we were interested in exploring the other end of the well-being continuum, the really far end of the positive continuum that has elements of feeling good and living well, and it's beyond merely surviving. We were looking for examples of what Kim Cameron calls positive deviance, of being beyond expectations of merely coping. And where paying attention to the good, the positive, the virtuous, tends to grow and build even more of the same, what can be called a virtuous cycle. So these experiences were being studied in the business fields, in health, in social work, where findings showed that increasing and improving well-being had important positive impacts on learning, on creativity, on connectivity, on productivity, on risk-taking, and health. Research was also examining compassion in organizations and other human capacities of how employees triumphed over trauma, how trust and connections are key to innovation. In psychology, we found that Martin Seligman's conception of flourishing, which you can see here on the left, my right of the slide, resonated with our intentions of wanting to learn from teachers who are already experiencing a full and whole sense of well-being at work, even with the challenges, frustrations, and traumas that are evident in all human systems. And Seligman's notions of flourishing really are about attending to 5 pillars: positive emotions, engagement, relationship, meaning, achievement, as we attend to and assure that we are experiencing these on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, over the course of our life, that the more we are able to experience these, the more we are likely to indicate that we are experiencing a robust sense of well-being. And this PERMA model really resonated with us around ideas of what it could mean to research teacher leadership in schools. So as a researcher of leadership and professional learning, I wondered where the studies on positive deviance were in the school improvement literature. I was used to reading about the problems, the challenges, and the failures of school improvement and wondered what else could we learn about organizing schools and engaging individuals and teams in innovative, creative, energizing professional lives if we examined that positive end of the spectrum. I was curious about positive deviance among teachers and administrators as a professional learning lens. So this was back in 2014, 2015, and I knew that much of what I was reading about in the positive research literature had to be evident in schools and could be of use in schools, where our work really is about human development at all ages, from teeny tiny kindergarten all the way through to grade 12, and then all of the adults engaged in education. We really are engaged in ongoing human development. So with my colleague Keith, I wanted to learn more. So as I mentioned, we were influenced by the research in positive psychology and business, as well as from appreciative inquiry approaches to change and research. We designed a research project that would pay attention to well-being from a positive perspective. We carried out appreciative case studies in British Columbia and Saskatchewan. This meant we were purposely asking participants to recount stories and experiences of well-being. Again, this didn't mean denying or ignoring the challenges and stressors in their work that are a reality in the work of teachers. And we asked our participants to share with us how they felt and experienced well-being as it already existed in their work. So I want to take just a quick moment to talk about this idea of shifting mindsets as an integral part of what it means to be able to experience well-being. So as I've shared, I intentionally take an appreciative approach to this research. How and why we ask questions will lead us towards certain spaces and places in our inquiries. And we wanted to open a space for talking about well-being at work in a way that really encouraged well-being. If you ask about stress, you'll hear answers about stress. As an example, David Cooperrider is one of the originators of appreciative inquiry. In his graduate school research, he was doing case studies on nurses in hospitals to learn about health systems and how to better organize. He knew that asking about stress gave him tons of information about the exhausting, depleting, frustrating aspects of their work. What he found when he asked about energizing and engaging aspects of work was that these very same nurses shared a different story of the same job. What's more, the more they focused on the positive and engaging aspects of their work, the more improvement the hospital saw overall. This didn't mean that the negative aspects disappeared, but that they were able to continue to grow and build their work through these challenges and may have had even more energy and hope for dealing with these from this appreciative perspective. So now's your chance to do a little bit of work here. I show you this picture of a log pile. And we, as I said, had taken the approach of wanting to hear about well-being that already existed in teachers' work, to gain a better description of well-being from teachers in ways that allowed us to offer insights and recommendations for others. So we designed our questions and approaches for data collection with a positive orientation. What we found is that the conversations with participants still included struggles, challenge, heartbreak, trauma, but the tone and the energy around these stories and through these conversations was building toward a more generative conversation, one that seemed to empower participants to see with fresh eyes their work and their colleagues in ways that energized and built a sense of hope or agency. So I'll share a particular story about the research related to that in a little bit. In another instant, I had had a participant visit me after a workshop a couple of years ago, and she told me that participating in this research gave her a sense of energy and agency that helped her move to a place of enjoyment and engagement in the last years of her work. She was nearing retirement, and she had said she was feeling very tired, depleted, exhausted. Participating in this research gave her a different way of seeing her work. that sharing stories of well-being with her colleagues and with us was, in her words, life-changing. And we felt that as well. So coming back to this picture of the logs, let's see what it means to take, to see our environment with fresh eyes. So you've got a picture in front of you. I hope that you can all see it. It's a log pile. This is your opportunity to exercise your fingers a moment here. In the chat box, just start typing out, what do you see in this picture? As an example, you might type logs, fence, leaves, hard work in terms of piling it. I'll give about 20 seconds for you to type as many things as you can possibly see in this image. And hopefully we'll have a big waterfall of words coming at us.
Sorry, Sabre, to interrupt. I don't know if your screen advanced, so I don't think we can see the logs. If you can just...
You don't see the picture of the cat?
No, we still see the tree and appreciative inquiry.
What do you see now?
It's the same on my screen.
Oh, I don't know why it's not advancing.
Do you want to stop sharing and try resharing again? Sometimes that works.
Oh, I hope this works.
It wouldn't be a Zoom call if there wasn't some technology issue, right?
See an image of a log pile?
No, I see a blank screen now.
Oh, that's terrific. All right, I will try sharing screen one more time. And still no advance.
Nope.
That pretty much exhausts my technology ability. So I can try to carry on without screen. It's certainly not as interesting.
Do you want to very quickly send me your presentation? I can see if I can.
Sure.
Oh, I can. Now I can see your screen.
Now you can see it. Hang on. Did that work?
Yes, I can see logs now.
Okay, people were back in action. Let me now make sure I turn off my email so it doesn't continue to ding. All right, if you can see this current slide, we're on it.
Yay!
Okay, so now all this buildup, and really it is just a picture of a log pile. So just take 10 seconds, look at the log pile, and in the chat room, if you want to just share what you can see going on in the chat. And as I said, it's something as easy as logs. It might be fence, it might be leaves, maybe it's fall is coming, maybe it's hard work. Just share a few things that you see about the log pile. And I can't see the chat, so we'll see if it... So I'm assuming that there are lots of words out there like logs, trees, fence, grass. I'm wondering if you see a cat. If you don't see a cat, I'm going to ask you to start scanning for a cat. And to move us along, I'll say start scanning for a cat in this middle log pile. Keep looking for that cat. Look at the very top, and I'll circle it with my cursor if you can see. You should see a cute, cuddly, sleeping orange cat. Ellen, you can be my verifier. Do you see a cat in that log pile now?
I think I do.
Right here.
Yes.
Can you see my cursor? So
yes,
there,
I can see it.
The reason, thank you, Ellen, the reason that I like this picture is it gives us an opportunity to think about what does it mean to look at our environment in different ways with fresh eyes, without the assumptions that we bring, because we have seen a log pile so many times, so often, we go on what Ellen Langer, who is a psychologist out of Harvard, what she calls autopilot, mindlessness. And she says that mindfulness is an attention to difference, to novelty, to the unexpected, to the surprising in our environment as a way to shift out of that mindlessness and toward mindfulness. So how can we learn to attend to our work in ways that encourages us to see vitality, to see possibility for energy and engagement? Where are the cute and cuddly little sleepy cats in our environment? How can we learn to attend to our work, to our classroom, to our staff room in new ways, expecting novelty, seeking out difference? How can we look for connection or fun? As I'll share, we learned from practicing teachers and administrators how to do just that. And it was a really important part of how they experienced well-being. How to see our work in ways that allows us to notice well-being, to nurture and grow it, and to sustain flourishing within typical work worlds, just like yours. It is possible to grow agency for improving our own and others' well-being within the existing constraints and challenges that we face. And we call this crafting our work for well-being. So we'll leave our cat thinking again to this idea of how do we attend to our environment with fresh eyes. So thinking back to the power of questions in the slide on appreciative inquiry, we framed a research question from an appreciative approach and encouraged participants to think about their work with new possibilities available from a fresh perspective. What if your primary role is to learn how to flourish, so that you may encourage all others in your school community to do the same? And in brackets, I'd add, most of the time. What does it mean to you to flourish? We developed a set of questions that allows for a deep dive into this flourishing inquiry. What does it mean to me to flourish? What if my primary role at work is to learn how to flourish? And how do I engage in ways that helps me to attend to my work in ways to see well-being, to notice it, to nurture it, to grow it? So as you'll likely see on the slides, I use this image of the hummingbird often in relation to this idea of well-being. I'll show you a brief clip of a video I saw early in our study, and it captured for us this idea of shifting mindsets toward well-being, of paying attention to strengths and gifts and talents as a way of magnifying who we are and what we do in our work and life. And we'll see if this works. I will play this, fingers crossed.
We are constantly being bombarded by problems that we face, and sometimes we can get completely overwhelmed. The story of the hummingbird is about this huge forest being consumed by a fire. All the animals in the forest come out and they are transfixed as they watch the forest burning, and they feel very overwhelmed, very powerless, except this little hummingbird. It says, I'm going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearest stream, takes a drop of water, and puts it on the fire and goes up and down, up and down, up and down as fast as it can. In the meantime, all the other animals, much bigger animals like the elephant with a big trunk, could bring much more water. They are standing there helpless, and they are saying to the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You're too little. This fire is too big. Your wings are too little. And you're big, so small, you can only bring a small drop of water at a time. But as they continue to discourage it, it turns to them without wasting any time and tells them, I'm doing the best I can. And that, to me, is what all of us should do. We should always feel like a hummingbird. I may feel insignificant, but I certainly don't want to be like the animals watching as the planet goes down the drain. I will be a hummingbird. I will do the best I can.
So in the spirit of thinking about how to be a hummingbird, in the spirit of appreciative conversations, of seeking out novelty and difference and wonderment, and looking to notice well-being, take just 5 seconds on your own right now. Think back over your day. And in the chat, share at least one experience that contributed to your well-being in some way today. Maybe that was a positive emotion. Maybe you had a sense of engagement, of being fully in the flow of the moment at work or at some point in your day. Maybe it was a positive moment in a relationship. Maybe it was a sense of meaning, of feeling like you were on purpose for that moment. Maybe it was a sense of achievement or accomplishment. So take just 10 seconds and then let's everyone share in the chat. It will be a big waterfall chat conversation. Share out the one moment in your day that really contributed to you experiencing a sense of well-being. I have my timer on. I'm literally giving you 20 seconds. I can't see the chat, but I'm hoping that there are lots of things pouring in that reflect how you have, in a small way, experienced well-being today. And notice how you feel, both reflecting on your own well-being, sharing it out in public through the chat, and then perhaps how do you feel reading the stories of your PhD Canada colleagues and their sense of well-being? And we're going to come back to that. So let me share just a little bit about our research, and then I'm going to give you another opportunity to engage here. So this fact sheet was one that we developed that is on the EdCan network. It really is just an overview of our research project with a description at the top around what does it mean to flourish at work was really our focusing question. You can see in the top here, we have a conceptual model of flourishing in schools. And the model really shows what we called 3 domains of flourishing: adaptive community, leaderful mindsets, subjective well-being. This model emerged for us as we connected with our participants in schools, teachers and administrators in schools, again in BC and Saskatchewan, through our appreciative conversations and through what we were learning through our ongoing literature review, all the different research in the positive fields. And we noticed that these 3 different domains tend to be evident in most of the stories that we were hearing from teachers, important pieces around what conditions were necessary for them to experience what they would consider a sense of well-being. In the inside piece, you can notice 3 different, what we called professional virtues for flourishing: compassion, trust, and hope. And the joining together of all of these pieces was how flourishing was experienced. So through a sense of feeling well and living well together, this idea of well-being, through leaderful mindsets of experiencing opportunities of being change agents for the good in their communities. And then adaptive community, this idea of being able to identify and articulate ways that they were able to work together with others in adaptive and fluid ways to connect and engage in innovative and fun practices. And so all of these pieces together share what combine to form what we called the model for flourishing in schools. And in this next one, I want to show you just an example. So this is a practice that was really helpful for school communities, whether it's small groups, individual, large groups, large districts, of determining the ways that they already notice. The sticky notes are ways that they already notice well-being as experienced in their community context, their school context, and thinking about how these connect to the different domains and to the different virtues. And this opportunity allows them to reflect on what's already working well and to see opportunities for continuing to grow more of what's working well. So it really became a reflective tool, almost like a well-being audit that was useful for organizations, for individuals, and for small groups to determine how are we flourishing? What does it mean to flourish? How can we talk about well-being in a way that helps us really identify our gifts, our strengths, our talents, thinking again to that hummingbird and having small moments, small experiences really be part of what it means to think about well-being. So the experience for those who were engaged in these appreciative conversations around what is already working well for us, the experience itself is generative. It creates more. It's one of those virtuous cycles. The more you notice well-being, the more energizing it is to think about well-being and how to nurture it and how to grow it. So these were participant experiences, school personnel experiences, and then taken together, we synthesized all of the experiences that we had from various school participants throughout the research. We've highlighted them here. You can see the various, I'll let you read through this slide. There's a lot there, but the idea of well-being, making time for fun, laughter, play, feeling a sense of presence with students, with colleagues and staff. This idea of adaptive community, an ongoing practice and process of practicing resiliency, experiencing meaning and satisfaction, facilitating feedback for learning. So what are the ways that we connect and construct together what we need to continue to work well? And this idea of a leaderful mindset, sharing vibrancy and passion for the betterment of greater community well-being, modeling well-being, ongoing learning and building teacher capacities to expand leadership and improve schools. So you can see that well-being exists in schools. We need to learn how to notice it. We need to learn how to nurture it. And then hopefully through these opportunities to connect, we can continue to grow it. So here's another example, and I offer these here as opportunities for practices that you can take away and use in your own context. And these can be done in small groups, they could be done in large groups. This is another example of a school who designed their own flourishing inquiry to notice what was working well, made them feel connected, engaged, happy on purpose in their work. They were already grouped in teams on the staff, and they each team already had a lead or a department lead. Over the course of a month, they paid attention to noticing flourishing and emailed their lead with all their moments. It could have been a quick picture or a picture of a sticky note. Anything where they felt a sense of well-being. The lead shared these with us as data, and we tabulated which team had the most moments. We called it happy hunting. We did this in other ways with other schools and had similar experiences. So this school liked to have friendly competitions, and they said, let's have an ice cream sundae challenge for the winners. We said, great. So one team did win in numbers, but I remember someone from the red team who did not win. During the ice cream sundae celebration, and of course we had ice cream for everyone. So during the celebration, they told me that this competition was so valuable for their team. They remembered what they loved about work and about each other, and started going out for lunch each week to talk about what they found during their happy hunts. Well, right now we can't be necessarily physically together during lunch, but what are the ways that we could engage in some happy hunting and share our findings with each other to grow and magnify where we do experience moments of well-being and flourishing. So that is a challenge for you. That's your challenge. How could you engage in some happy hunting? How can you share it? Because there is power in sharing well-being stories. And what do you notice about the process of engaging together in noticing and nurturing your well-being? So I come back to these questions. These 3 signaling questions are useful for orienting us to notice well-being in ways that allow us to grow and nurture more of what we want, while also attending to the practice of letting go of what is not working well. And again, I offer you these questions as a practice. What if you were to take these questions and engage in your own flourishing inquiry to learn about your own well-being at work, how you can notice it, nurture it, and sustain it. So I've shared a lot with you. I do want to leave time for questions, and I know we're getting close to that time. Before we do, I thought we could engage in one practice together that has been shown in research to contribute to improving teacher well-being, mindfulness. And so there is much research on this. I'm sure that many of us tonight in the webinar already include aspects of a mindfulness practice, whether it is Ellen Langer's mindful attention to novelty, to difference, or what I will share with you now is a pause practice, a breath practice. And this, sorry, I lost my spot in my notes. This practice, this pause practice, I've taken it from the Smart Education, which is a curriculum developed at UBC. My colleague, Dr. Karen Raganadin, was the lead on the project to develop this curriculum as a mindfulness-based stress reduction program available for teachers. And so in this pause practice, I'll lead us through. It will only take about a minute and a half. You are welcome to sit and just do as you like, or you can join me in this mindfulness practice. And so I invite you either to stand or sit. You can lie down. We're going to take 3 deep breaths together. So let's take one now. And release. There's something really powerful. There's something very life-giving about breathing together in community. So when you take each of your deep belly breaths, you're going to check in and see what is there for you in terms of feelings, body sensations. The next breath will be about emotions. And then the next breath is just going to check into your thoughts. What do you notice? So in this first breath, check in. What do you notice in your body? Take another breath if you like and notice your body. On this next breath in, what emotions do you notice as you breathe in deep all the way from your belly through your lungs? And release. What emotions are present for you as you feel your feet firmly on the ground and being fully supported with this last breath? Breathe all the way up through into your can't even say the word, brain, mind, head. What thoughts do you notice? And this last one is something that I've borrowed from Thich Nhat Hanh, and he is a Buddhist monk. And on this last breath, smile and know that all will be okay. So that is a very available practice for each of us. And just notice how that feels for you and how maybe that's your one small thing. So here is my last sort of offering of practical pieces. These are questions, again, that help you to think about your context, what's already working well that I can further support. Where do I see opportunities for letting go? What is the one smallest thing I could do to start living toward flourishing in my work? How about for others? And who are my co-connectors for growing flourishing? So in the chat box, take 20 seconds. What is one small thing you could do to start living toward flourishing in your work? Think to the moment you shared earlier in the chat, the one moment that contributed to your well-being. How can you intentionally craft your work tomorrow to experience that again, and maybe again, and maybe again? How will you notice it? How will you share it? So very briefly, take this moment in the chat. One moment that contributes to your flourishing and one small thing you can do tomorrow to take a small step toward flourishing in your work. This is your hummingbird moment. So I'll give you 20 seconds to do that. As I said, I can't see the chat, but I hope there's a whole waterfall of small steps that you can each be doing toward starting to live toward flourishing in your work. So as I mentioned, there are many practices that we developed. You can access them in, we have several books that we have developed. This last book, Perspectives on Flourishing in Schools, is an edited volume of stories, experiences, research on well-being from across all areas of the school system. So I encourage you to check those out, see what works for you. As I mentioned, I am the Director of Graduate Programs, and I never want to leave an opportunity for aside without letting you know that we have a really vibrant and exciting graduate program. So connect with me or go to our website if you'd like to learn more about graduate programs and how perhaps you could be a student in the beautiful Okanagan campus. And we are, as you know, offering many of our courses are offered online and can be completed online. And I will leave this as just my contact slide, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to share my work on teacher well-being. With that, Ellen, I think I'm right on time. I will stop sharing. Oh, that's another hidden animal picture. I have so many of those, they're fantastic. I'll leave it there and turn it back to you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Sabre. I know I can say I've learned a ton, and I love the hummingbird story. We've been seeing lots of great comments coming through in the chat, and I think, you know, given the world that we find ourselves in right now, the hummingbird story is so relevant, and just reminding yourself that, you know, you are doing the best that you can, and that's all you can ask to do, right? No matter what, you can always do that. So we do have a few questions coming in, which is great. The first one is, I liked what you said about teacher well-being, not a one-person approach, it's an organizational imperative. So while, what are your thoughts about a systemic approach to teacher well-being?
Well, and I did see that my research partner, Kate Story, is on the call tonight, and we are engaged in some research to understand different approaches to system-wide well-being. I'm also currently doing some research on leadership and well-being. And so I think, you know, there's more that we can always be learning. I think this opportunity of shifting mindset toward well-being is probably one of the first things that we can do in terms of even systemic approaches. Is what are the ways that we can notice well-being as an important aspect of our work? What are the ways that supports are in place once we notice what's working well? And I would encourage you to take a look at the model, the conceptual flourishing in schools model. That is and has had really great resonance as an organizational model in terms of being able to notice, a great reflection tool for how can we notice what's working well in ways that allows us to build on it, so that we are building from a place of confidence for then growing more and being able to attend to those pieces that are not serving us well.
Perfect. Do you have any advice for creating a flourishing workspace right now, as we are all experiencing our COVID isolation and whatever level of isolation that may be?
Yeah, I really think that little hummingbird has a lot to teach us. And one of the pieces that we noticed going through this research is that well-being and flourishing, it really is, it's a diversity approach. There's not a one size fits all. There's no blanket approach. So I really would encourage the use of the questions. How do I notice well-being? And really take a moment to think about how you might record the well-being. We recorded it in the chat today, but what are the ways that you can notice? First, what does well-being mean to me? Is it laughing with my colleagues? Is it having a moment of presence and quiet with my students? Is it having an opportunity to be outside during the day? We really have to be able to know what it is that we're trying to grow before we can really build anything. So I would say go to my mindful alignment book for more thinking on how to craft your work in a way that really builds and grows well-being.
Our next one is more just a bit of clarity. Someone is trying to understand what you mean about finding opportunities of letting go. Do you mean letting go of any negatives that you notice, or if you could just expand that a bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that one again it can be many things. So as you start to pay attention to your mindsets and notice how you are experiencing well-being and notice it, do you notice tendencies toward being one of those other animals in the forest? And can you help those animals? We all have all parts of those in ourselves. We all have mindsets that are not always perfectly attuned to what it means to be well-being. So what are the ways, maybe through a mindfulness approach, can we notice how some beliefs that we carry or stories that we tell ourselves are maybe hindering opportunities to grow well-being? I would suggest that connecting in collaborative groups, nothing better than collegial feedback to help us see the world in new ways. We can really learn and grow and support. So it could be letting go of practices. It could be letting go of beliefs. It could be letting go of routines and habits. And again, it goes back to that first step of how do I notice well-being? Because it's really hard to change something until we notice it and recognize how we could maybe shift it.
That's fantastic. Next question is, how would you respond to skeptics who might be dismissive of this approach or less supportive of this approach?
Yeah, well, welcome. You're here tonight. I know you are. I would say partly I'm influenced by the work of Margaret Wheatley, who is a writer in leadership, and she really talks about this idea of walking your path, knowing it's the right one and the good one, and not needing everyone to be with you at the same time on the same path, but ensuring that you have a wide enough path always that allows for those to join when they're ready. Well-being really is, as I said, there's a whole continuum of well-being, and we are all on that continuum at different times and different ways, at different places for different reasons. And really the opportunity is there to invite and not to necessarily try to convert. All we can do is invite. And so, you know, in terms of compassion in organizations, that research is really interesting to show the more compassionate responses we can develop in organizations, the more the entire organization contribute or grows in well-being. So even taking a look at some of that research on compassion, empathy, all of those pieces. I'm gone on long. I can see Ellen like, there's another one, there's another one.
No, I'm just soaking up every second. It's so also helpful. Someone is wondering if you could recommend a resource that provides educators with any practical strategies, activities, or school-wide initiatives, anything like that, to improve well-being and mindsets.
Beyond my fantastic resources. There are so many out there. There are so many out there. And so I think even visiting the McConnell, the Well Ahead website would be a really great place to go. They have a lot of resources out there. You can look, I'm sure PhD Canada has a ton of resources, and even in terms of the Teach Resilience. So your district's often will be a great place to start. And so your social emotional learning teachers would be a really great place to also start. So no, I don't have one perfect, wonderful one. I have lots of encouragement for noticing your own environment and taking a look at what your colleagues are using. What are your colleagues using? And start poking around, looking for those. I mean, resources are just like those cute little cats. They're always there. They're available. We just need to start opening our eyes and seeing with fresh eyes. So how's that for skirting the answer?
Beautifully skirted, but also good plugs. Next question is an interesting one. When does purposed focus on flourishing border on or risk becoming narcissistic? Is that something you've thought of before? Or does it even?
I actually don't have an answer to that. That would be interesting to look at whether or not a focus on purpose becomes narcissistic. Interesting. My take on it is that generally purpose tends to be quite connected to ensuring others around us are also feeling flourishing, feeling engaging. And so if you're noticing that you're becoming self-referential or you're becoming self-absorbed, then that might be an opportunity to bring in some of your colleagues and help them be part of what it means to look at a wider view of well-being for all.
I think we have time for just a couple more. So if any of the attendees have any questions that you haven't submitted, please send them in right now. Hummingbird story is getting lots of positive feedback here. Everyone loves it. Wondering if you have any other suggestions to help encourage people or help to bring people along the process with you.
We have, let me think. I mean, invitation is always, invitation and modeling are really, I think, our best opportunities for connecting. I'll plug my own book and say there's some really interesting empathy and listening activities that are really about, as we engage in listening from an empathic perspective, it helps us to gain deeper levels of understanding. And when we better understand our colleagues, our students, our community members, I think that will give us insight into the entry point for what's needed and what can be offered. And often what we found anyway through our conversations, the experience of being able to talk with others about what really motivates us, what encourages us, what we love, what we enjoy, those are not conversations that we have often at work. And even shifting toward a staff meeting, where one of the principals at our staff meeting, she called them onions and orchids, and she started with orchids first. And I know that's a practice that many have in their meetings or their classroom morning meetings of, hey, what's really working? What have you enjoyed today? And onions, what are you struggling with? What are the ways that we can help you? And I think really just opening up conversation spaces and places from an appreciative approach, seeking to understand, to connect, to grow, to love each other more, to help us each see the hummingbird in ourselves. I think that's a really, those are opportunities to engage and to connect with others.
Amazing. I love orchids and onions. That's so funny. I think last question we'll take then, and it's coming from myself and my colleagues here. So we've heard from a number of different teachers all across the country and all levels that they're just very tired and overworked and exhausted at this point in the year. And we've suggested that, giving themselves permission to go to bed early and finding those things is a great first step. How would you connect that to flourishing on a larger level?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hear some binging happening on my side. I apologize for that. So I think two things. First, connecting back to the idea of noticing what does give us well-being at this time, and thinking to that hummingbird story. As a hummingbird, it's always changing in terms of the one small thing. Our strengths, our talents, and gifts, they shift and change over time. And right now we're in a very particular time where we really need to be assessing what are our strengths, what are our gifts, what are our talents, how can we find ways to access and use those? And then this idea of letting go. What are some stories about teaching that are inhibiting my wellness? this idea of permission really could be looked at as a story we tell ourselves about what we ought to do, and what are ways that we might shift those to see within that huge log pile of demands, where's that little cat who could maybe give us fresh eyes and insights. And I keep going back to this idea of a community of flourishing co-partners, because more often than not, when we connect around what's working well, when we connect around what's helping us to grow our well-being and sharing those stories, that becomes our level of confidence for how we can grow more and how we can support and help each other when it's not working well. And I do want to, again, just recognize that the research and practices on stress and burnout and depletion, this is really important, and it's not something to be dismissed, to just say, oh, put on your positive glasses and all will be well. It is absolutely not. And learning to see the supports that we need to ensure our well-being, that also is a part of this professional learning toward well-being, and that requires both individual, but it certainly requires organizational supports. So it is certainly not just put on those rose-colored glasses and put your head in the sand.
That's amazing. Well, with that, I want to say thank you so much, Sabre, for taking the time to be with us and to, you know, enhance all of our learning and really make us struggle to find that cat, but know that the cat is always there. I'm amazed at how hard it was to find it. And I want to thank everybody for participating and taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us on this journey tonight. So with that, I am going to stop the recording and say thank you and good evening, and we hope to be in touch soon. Have a great night, everyone.